Hello there, folks. I want to thank you all for being here for Joe and his family today. Your presence is truly appreciated. Before we get started, if you wouldn't mind, if you do have your cell phones, you can turn them on silent or turn them off for us so we can proceed uninterrupted. We sure would appreciate that. And in a moment, celebrate Brian Bennett with our service. So again, thank you all for being here today.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. As Sam said, my name is Brian. I'm what they call a funeral celebrant. I have a normal day job, probably like many of you. I'm a leadership consultant by profession. But I do this with the Routes On team because a few years ago, I lost my mom, and what you're doing today became very personal and powerful. And I had the privilege to sit down with the family the other day, and my privilege is I get to hear a story about someone that I didn't know. And the family did a great job being able to paint a picture of Joe for me, and I asked him a ton of questions and tried to keep up and type as fast as I could. And I got to hear one story after another. And I love coming early and seeing the pictures and kind of catching the energy of the room. And I'll be honest, you guys are a little rowdy for a funeral. But from what I understand about Joe and the way that he lives life, this is exactly the spirit that he would have wanted here today. And the family wanted to make sure that we struck that balance between mourning a loss, which I know that this is brutally hard, but being able to celebrate a life that was very well lived. I want to tell those of you who have little ones here, you let the kids be kids. We want to create a family atmosphere because that's what Joe was all about. So don't even worry about that. That's exactly why we're here today. I know that this is unbelievably unexpected. When I heard the story about what happened, my heart just breaks for you guys. And in the years that I've been doing this, I'll tell you that the hardest kinds of losses are sudden and unexpected losses. You can take the normal grieving process and multiply it by 100 because there's just nowhere to put it. There's nothing to set up for something like this. And so you being here today is even more important. A very wise person once said, it's okay to miss him. It's okay to continue to say his name and talk to him every day if you need to. It's okay to cry. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to breathe deeply. It's okay to smile when you think of him. It's going to be okay to have days when you can function, and it's going to be okay to have days when you just don't feel like it. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be thankful. It's okay to remember. It's okay to hope. The biggest thing is it's okay to be honest about however it is you're feeling. Probably the biggest thing that I've learned about grief in the last decade or so is it's kind of messy. It doesn't even affect two people in the same family the same way because you all have different perspectives and your story's in a different place than it was a month ago or it will be a month from now. And so I've learned that the best thing that a family can do after a loss like this, especially with it being sudden, is just give each other space. Let each other feel however it is you need to feel. The only right way to feel today is exactly how you're feeling today. And it meant so much to be able to be with the family and know that they're doing this together, and then to see such a great community of support around them is even more powerful. I'm a big reader, and one of my favorite authors is a guy named Frederick Bachman. And I was reading one of his books the other night, and this paragraph kind of popped off the page, so I got up and I typed it out because it was so powerful. He said, over time, I've realized that deep down, almost everyone asks themselves the same sort of questions about life, especially as we get a little older. We start to ask ourselves, am I a good person? Have I made anyone proud? Am I useful to society? Was I good at my job? Am I considered generous and considerate? Does anyone want me to be their friend? Have I been a good parent? And ultimately, we ask ourselves the question, you know what? My life even mattered. And you guys are showing in a strong way today, Joe's life mattered, didn't it? Sounds to me like he could go down that list and check yes, 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 and yes to every single one of those questions. I'm a big believer in something that I call holy collisions. And what I mean by that is if you think over the course of your life There are certain times that we are lucky enough to run into the exact right person, and we run into them at the exact right time of our lives for the exact right reason that we were supposed to run into that person. That's what I call a holy collision. You might be sitting next to or near one of your holy collisions right now. And you think back to that very first moment you met. You know, where were you? And who saw the other first? And who said hello first? And what was it about each other that has led to the significant relationship that it is today? Because if you think about it, the only thing that matters on a day like today is relationships, especially those significant holy collision relationships. It would be fascinating to be able to look down in this room right now and see all the different memories and all the different conversations and all the different moments. And whenever I have the privilege to do a service like this, I consider this group of people sitting in this chapel at this moment, we're our own version of a holy collision. Try to explain why this group of people would ever be at the same place at the same time. And yet here we are. And let's be honest, when we parked our cars a few minutes ago, I would guess that many of us in this room have big decisions we're trying to make, things we're worrying about. There might be something going on in your life this afternoon that nobody else in this room is even aware of. And all that stuff's going to be waiting for us when we go back to our busy lives. So my hope and my prayer is really simple today. I hope that by the time we go back to our lives, we're going to take some of His Spirit with us. And to me, that is the most powerful way to celebrate someone's life, when their story makes a difference in our story. So before I go any further, if you're comfortable joining me, could I share a word of prayer with you? Okay. God, I thank you for this holy collision of friends and family, relationships that have been nurtured and cared for years and years. And I thank you for Joe. I thank you for exactly who you made him to be and the kind of man that he was. And God, I don't understand how you do it, but I have a personal belief that you can look down on a room like this and somehow you know what's going on in the lives of every person, every chair in this room. And so my prayer is that in the next few moments, that we might remember something, change our perspective on something, even feel something from Joe's story that we can take out and put it immediately in place in our own story and make this world a better place simply because of it. So I ask for you to be with us today. Please give us comfort, not only today, but in the days and weeks and months ahead. In your name we pray these things. Amen. You know, one of Joe's main holy collisions is this lovely young lady down here, Sean. I always love to hear the story about how two people met. And she told me that they met at a mutual friend's birthday. They had both been working at Miami Valley at the time, but didn't know each other, but they met there. And over the course of the next few weeks, Sean said unapologetically, she said, he stalked me. So I don't know what magic she waved. This was way back before dating apps, but he swiped right hard on her. And that has led to 34 great years together. She texted me last night and told me that one of the things that people kidded him about, that he kind of was sheepish about, was that he looked a lot like Paul Newman back in the day. And so you can see the attraction. And when she told me that, I was like, oh, come on now. And then I came and saw the pictures today. He really did look like Paul Newman back in the day. So for the next few moments, I'm going to get out of the way because the people that knew Joe best are going to come up and share with us. I'm going to get out of the way, and then one right after another. First of all, Randy and Scott are going to come up. And then a friend of his, coworker Scott, is going to come up, and then Raquel, and then Tony. So you guys can just come up right in that order, okay?
Hi, everybody. This good? Yeah, maybe? Okay. Okay. My dad knew I was reading this off my phone, but I will leave give me. Hi. I've spent the last few days trying to figure out how to put into words what my dad meant to me. But the truth is, I'm not sure there are words big enough, because how do you sum up a person who's been such a constant part of your life? My dad was the most selfless person I've ever known. He had the biggest heart, and he never hesitated to put the people he loved before himself. He didn't just tell us he loved us, he showed us every day. I've always been incredibly close with both of my parents. Even as an adult with my own family, I've probably spent more time, or just the same amount of time at my parents' house every week. than I do at my own. Their house wasn't just somewhere I visited, it was my home. It's where we gathered, where my kids played, where we celebrated birthdays and holidays, and where everyday moments become memories I'll always cherish. And I think that's what makes this really hard. My dad was someone I only saw every now and then. He was part of my everyday life, and I never had to wonder if he was there because he always was. When I think back on my childhood, I realized a lot of how much of himself he gave to me. He worked nights and somehow made sure he was the one who got me up for school every morning. And I didn't really realize how exhausted he must have been until later, but he never let me see it. Every morning, he walked me to the bus stop until I was in 8th grade, and I asked him not to anymore because I thought I was too old. So when 9th grade started, he drove me to school instead. One of my favorite things about my dad was the way he made little things matter. I remember one Christmas, I had a very specific idea of how I wanted the Christmas lights. I wanted red, green, red, green, red, green. I don't know why, but back then you couldn't buy it enough. And my dad bought multiple strands to make that happen and switched out every single light for me to make sure that they were the exact way I wanted them to be. Because it mattered to me and mattered to him. And as a baby, I knocked out all of his teeth, all of them. So he wore dentures for the rest of his life. And he never complained about that in front of me, but sometimes I still can't believe that happened. And watching him become Papa Joe was one of the greatest gifts I've gotten to experience. There's not a lot more if you love more than Ryan and Willow and spending time with them. Every time they came over, they knew exactly where to find them, and somehow he'd always sneak them 3 Hershey kisses, or as I would say, Hershey kisses. Not 2, not 4, always 3. Every Christmas, we'd hunt for new flavors of Hershey Kisses and give him cherry cordials because that's how much he loved them. When Wyatt was in preschool, my dad would take him, and he would take him an hour early. And even though it drove me insane, I know he just wanted to make sure he did everything right. This fall, he was planning on watching Willow for us every day, and I'm so sad that we didn't get to make that happen. But that's who Papa Joe was. People often tell me I'm really easygoing or that I always try to find the positive in things. And if that's true, it's because of my dad. He had a way of making people feel calm, loved, and safe. And that's the part of my hope I always carry. I wish anything that I could just rewind time. I'd give anything for one more conversation, one more hug, one more regular day. I'll miss stopping by the house just because when Mom is out of town. I'll miss your text checking in on me every day just to make sure I was okay. I'll miss hearing you yell my name during every march down at a Wayne game because no matter where I was, I could always hear it. I'll think of you every Christmas, when I hang lights, every time I see kisses, every Reese's Blizzard from Dairy Queen, every visit to the water park, and every Bengals game where the Bengals do what they do best and mess up a play. I'll be sure to say a curse word for you. And every time Wyatt or Willow does something that they would have made you smile. Those moments will always make me miss you. But they'll also remind me how lucky I was that you were my dad. Thank you for every sacrifice you made. You taught me what unconditional love should look like. You gave me a home I never had to outgrow. My grief is simply all the love I still have for you. I'll carry that love into the way I raise my kids and the way I love my family. And the stories I'll tell their Papa Joe for the rest of my life. Ever since I was little, my dad would always tell me, "You're going to miss me one day." And even though he was joking, he was right. Thank you for being the best dad and the best Papa Joe. I love you.
I first met Joe when I was 17. My friend had just started talking to Randy here, and one evening my friend asked me to pick Randy up in a nearby cul-de-sac. What she neglected to tell him was that it was not the cul-de-sac she lived in. She was sneaking out to meet us. I had no idea. Joe, being who he was, knew she was being sneaky. Anyone who knows Randy knows she has never been a convincing liar. He waited in his car for her to leave and went looking for her. I was waiting when she appeared between 2 houses. I thought it seemed strange, but apparently not strange enough to ask questions. As soon as she got in my car, he pulled in and blocked me in. He got out, came towards us, yelling that he was a cop, and ordered her out of the car. I just want to remind everyone I was innocent in all of this. That was the first time I met the man who would become my father-in-law. Although he did not realize it was me, when Randy and I officially started dating, he had no idea I was that same boy that was sneaking his daughter out. We told him several years later, which he was able to laugh about then. What makes that story funnier is that in all the years I knew him, that was the only time I ever heard him yell in anger. He did not have an aggressive bone in his body. He was gentle and kind, but that night he thought his daughter might be in trouble, and his protective instincts took over. I did not know then that I would spend the next 15 and a half years knowing him. His Korean law enforcement influenced me to follow a similar path. He thought that decision, in his words, was dumb as shit in this day and age. He wasn't wrong, but he supported me through it. We shared our war stories, and that gave us a connection that was ours. Some of my favorite memories were calls that brought me to the hospital where he worked. So whenever I arrived, he somehow found me. He always knew I was in the door somehow. And he would quickly be by my side, and he introduced me to anybody that was around. Everyone there knew who I was and my relationship to him. Those visits let me see him through the eyes of his coworkers. He was not respected only because of his rank, he was genuinely loved. His retirement party made that even clearer. People did not simply respect the uniform, they respected the man wearing it. He had that effect everywhere. When I showed him around the YMCA, he put far too much weight on every machine, and I'm sure he was sore as shit every time he went. But he kept coming back, and within 2 weeks, he'd already made friends with every person there around his age. So he didn't need me anymore. He told me that I don't have to show him around anymore. When I left the sheriff's office, I could tell he had mixed emotions about it. He was disappointed that I would no longer be in the field that kind of connected us. But beneath it, I could tell he was relieved. He understood the danger, the stress, and what you carried home after a shift. Part of him was simply grateful that I'd be safe. And that was when I understood that his concern for me went far beyond supporting his daughter's boyfriend. He treated me like his son. As loved as he was everywhere, the people he gave the most to were his family. He worked midnight so he could be there in the mornings and afternoons. He could take Randy to the bus stop in elementary school and middle school, and then drive her to school in high school, but stopping at Tim Hortons every single day for her because he would give her anything in the world. And he was still present for the moments that mattered. I worked midnights for a very long time, and I can tell you it's hard on the body and your mental, but you're there for everything that matters. And I could tell he was willing to sacrifice anything to be there. At one point, I did offer to take her to school, and he quickly denied that request. Some responsibilities were not open for negotiation. He worked 2 jobs most of his life so his family could just survive. He worked at Walmart for a while just so they could take a vacation to Disney World. I don't know many cops that also worked at Walmart, but he was just willing to do anything. He supported Sean while she went back to college. He made sure everything at home was taken care of. The dishes, laundry, vacuuming, somehow everything was always spotless in the house. He simply did whatever needed to be done. He taught me one of the most important lessons I had carried into my marriage. You support your family at all times. You show up, you make sacrifices, you do the hard work, and you keep a smile on your face. Maybe you whisper a few goddamn answer motherfuckers under your breath, but then you move on. Because the small things are never worth the big fights. He taught me that providing for a family means being present, sharing the burden, and doing ordinary things without expecting recognition. One of my greatest joys was watching him with our children. Whenever the children were around, he was no longer a 73-year-old man. He was just another one of the kids. He got on the floor and played Barbies with our 3-year-old daughter. He did puzzle, played games, and watched television with both children, cuddled onto his lap. Our daughter is the spitting image of Randy when she was little. He was completely taken with her. It was almost as though he was watching his own daughter grow up again. And both children had him wrapped around their fingers, and they knew it. They could convince him to play one more game, maybe put on a PG-13 movie, or sneak them an extra Hershey Kiss, even after mom and dad said no. He may have spent his career as a police sergeant, but he was defenseless against his grandchildren. Football season was another time which the excitement came alive. For almost 10 years, we played in the fantasy football league, and somehow, despite letting his computer auto-draft his team, and I'll say he took Joe Burrow in the first round every time, and then he let the computer do the rest. He beat me every year, and I don't know how. I was in the books, I was in statistics, I was as much into it as you could be, and he still beat me. And he was never afraid to talk shit about it. We even went and bought an iPad just to follow the scores live. His love for football went beyond the game. When Randy was a Warrior in high school, I remember him screaming her name over the crowd at every game. It did not matter how loud the crowd was, you could always hear him. Years later, when she came to coach, nothing changed. He still screamed her name from the stands as though were the one performing. She may have been the coach, but to him, she was his little girl, and he was still her proudest supporter. I will never forget the pride in his voice. That was how he loved his family. He showed up and made sure they knew how proud he was. He often spoke about the big man upstairs, as he called him. He always seemed at peace with the idea of death. I think law enforcement taught him something I came to understand as well over the years. None of us can predict when your name will be called by the big man. We can plan, worry, and try to control every detail, but ultimately, God has a plan for each of us. Whenever he spoke to me about that day, he made one thing clear: make sure Randy is taken care of. He never said it as though he doubted me. He trusted me completely. He was entrusting me with what mattered most to him. I want him to know that I heard him. Randy will always be taken care of. I will support her, protect her, and stand beside her, just as he supported and protected his family. It is a responsibility I take seriously and also an honor that he trusted me with it. Even though he was at peace with meeting the big man upstairs, he also appreciated some of the simpler gifts God gave us, especially Bud Light. On the day he died, he stopped by my house to drop off a few things that Randy left in their car. He told me how excited he was to go to Florida and get himself a 12-pack of Bud Light. I'm not sure there was ever a day I saw him when I did not hear him say, "Thank God for beer." I did not know that would be our last conversation. I wish I had known, because there's so many things I would have wanted to say. But there is something comforting about the fact that it was so completely Joe, just helping his daughter, looking forward to a trip, and talking about enjoying a cold beer. Our story began with him blocking my car in and yelling that he was a police officer. Somewhere between that cul-de-sac and our final conversation about beer, I stopped being the boy who had unknowingly helped his daughter sneak out. I stopped being his daughter's boyfriend or even his son-in-law. I became his son. He showed me that strength does not have to be loud. Sometimes strength looks like working midnight shifts, doing the laundry, playing Barbies on the floor, holding 2 grandchildren on your lap, screaming your daughter's name over a full crowd, or quietly making sure everyone you love has what they need. Today, although we are heartbroken, I hope we can find peace in knowing that he finally got to meet the big man upstairs. And wherever he is, I hope there's a cold Bud Light waiting for him. Thank God for beer, and thank God for every year we were given him.
Hi, my name is Scott. I'm a dispatcher at Premier Health. I started at Premier Health in 1983. I transferred to Miami Valley Hospital in 1995. That's where I met Joe at. I started out in registration. They would do night patrols. Our office was kind of isolated, and they would check on us. All the officers would. In 2007, he convinced me to transfer to dispatch. Wasn't sure I'd like it. Night shift, their night shift is a unique schedule. But Joe was my first sergeant. He worked we worked alone at that time. There was only one dispatcher. So your backup was your sergeant. So we spent a lot of time in the office together a lot. Joe and I had a unique relationship. He remembered my wife's name. She's a corrections officer. Always asked me how she was doing. He remembered my son's name. He's a Huber Heights police officer. Always asked me when things, like if he was involved in something that had happened in Huber Heights. After he retired, I would call and text. Joe never answered his phone. He would never answer the text right away. But he'd eventually get back to me. The only time Joe texts me, every once in a while, I get a text and say, "Are you working tonight?" And my response was always, "Are you at Frickers?" And he would say, "Yes." And I'd say, "No, I'm not working. I'm on my way." And I'd go over, we'd spend an hour or so just talking, catching up. Joe loved White Castle. I would pick up White Castles. I live closer to the one White Castle around. I'd pick up White Castles and just show up at his house. We'd sit out on the porch or in the backyard and eat White Castle and catch up. He always remembered everyone's names. He always liked to, my wife and I enjoyed going on vacation a lot. He always liked to talk about where we went, what we did. He always talked about Florida, his trips down to Florida. So he was not only a sergeant, he was a good friend, and I will miss him.
Joe was my stepdad. I never called him by that technicality though. I just called him Dad. And I knew I'd want to speak today, but when I sat down to write, it felt like an impossible task. I never once thought about him dying, much less what I'd say when he did. So I looked up what's supposed to go in a eulogy. And I read that a eulogy is a tribute to the deceased. And I thought about that for a minute. And I found myself fixated on how stupid of a word deceased is. The word cease means to stop or to come to an end. And the prefix de means to undo or to remove. To undo what ended. The word deceased should mean the opposite of death. And what kind of sense does that make? But then I thought about how nothing makes sense right now. It doesn't feel real that my dad's gone. How does a person just leave and cease to exist? My science education ended with basic chemistry, but I've been reading a lot in the last week. And I read about the first law of thermodynamics, that no energy in the universe is created or destroyed. And that humans spend their lives exuding energy via tiny vibrations in our cells and through heat and other means. And all of that energy goes on forever. And I found a lot of comfort and sense in that. And I read about all the basic elements and atoms a human is made of, about what happens to those atoms during cremation and after they're spread in the ocean, which is what my dad wants. And I learned that those all go on too. A lot of the elements are released into the air, and the ashes we'll put in the ocean will all help to form new life. They'll be in the plants and in the rain. And I thought it was interesting to learn that all those sentimental poems about how people are still around and the flowers and trees and wind and all that stuff, it's not just sentiment, it's actually a scientific fact. My dad will literally be in nature. And then I thought about memories and how people say our loved ones live on in our memories. And I wondered what even is a memory? And I always thought they were sort of like old movies that just kind of float and drift in and out of our minds. But I read a little bit about neurotransmitters and neural pathways and synapses, whatever those are. And I tried to understand how memories are held in our brains. And it's way too complicated for me to grasp or to try to repeat. But I learned that when we love someone, their presence causes physical changes in our brain. They leave a literal physical imprint on us. And I learned that when a person makes us feel safe, that those changes are amplified. And that was neat to learn. And keeping people safe was one of my dad's most defining traits. And I realized I was thinking and reading about all this, probably just to distract myself from the grief I didn't want to feel. So I decided to research grief. I read some things that are too boring to share, and we're really just putting words to what I know to be true because it's what I feel. But an interesting thing that I read about grief is that it can cause you to lose your memories. Something about the hippocampus and cortisol. And I read that the best way to preserve happy memories is to think them, to feel happy, and to make more new happy memories. And it almost feels like an error of nature. When you lose someone, all you want to do is preserve what you have left of them in your memory. But to do that, you must feel happy. And yet our natural reaction is grief. And it feels impossible I might ever feel normal or happy again. But I'm not willing to risk losing more of him than I already have, so I know I have to try. And I have a lot of happy memories of my dad. My very first memory in life is of him driving my 3-year-old self to Meijer in the middle of the night to let me pick out a candy bar. I'd woken up crying about it for some reason, and he didn't wait till the morning. He took me right then. I remember truly believing in Santa until I was 10 years old. He and my mom gave us so much for Christmas that I was certain they couldn't afford it and that Santa had to be real. He wasn't very indulgent himself, but he always wanted all of us to have anything and everything we wanted, big or small. And he went to great lengths to get us those things, whether that meant working 2 jobs, 80 hours a week, or being the first one to the store every day for weeks to see if they had Furbies or Tamagotchis in stock. Or he might even commit a minor crime. My mom told me that once she mentioned to my dad how much she wished she'd gotten my grandma's irises from a house she lived in years ago. My dad drove by the old house and saw the flowers were still there. And then he drove back to the house in the middle of the night with a flashlight and a shovel to dig them up. And I sometimes wonder why knocking on the door to ask the new owners for them wasn't the first option. But I think for my dad, that step just wasn't necessary. Whether the people living there accepted it or not, he was getting those flowers. You had to be careful what you said you wanted around him because one way or another, he'd make sure you got it. I remember all the mornings he'd come home from work and stay awake to see my mom off for the day and have her car started for her. And I thought it was sweet when I was younger, but now that I'm older and I've worked overnight shifts, I realize how much sacrifice and love it took to do that every morning. I remember every time he came to visit me while I lived in Florida or Missouri, he'd bring something for me. Esther Price chocolate or Boston Stoker coffee or Montgomery and barbecue sauce. Just something small that he knew I liked, but also to remind me of home. I remember my senior night for marching band when I was in high school. He choked up telling me how proud he was of me. And on that day, I knew he meant it and I felt it, but I didn't understand. I remember thinking it was just band and I was just average at it. But now that I have kids, I understand what he meant that day. And my dad absolutely loved his snowblower. He talked about it all the time. Just a couple weeks ago, he told my husband how we really need one and right now would be a great time to buy one. I never understood why he liked it so much, but I recently realized he liked it because it offered him a way to serve people. For years, he took the snowblower around the entire cul-de-sac sidewalk so the kids had a path to walk to the bus stop, and he did most of the driveways too. He slowed down some over the years, but just this past winter, he did his driveway and one of the neighbors. He really did live a life of service. We took a family vacation a couple years ago to Marathon, Florida, and I arrived last. I was 16 weeks pregnant, and there was an active category 4 hurricane, and I thought everyone was insane for not canceling. But being dramatic as I am, I decided if I didn't go and the hurricane wiped out my family, which I was certain was inevitable, it would be worse than if I went and got wiped away with them. So I showed up to the house, but I was mildly hysterical. And when I got there, my dad just gave me a hug, told me he loved me and that everything was going to be okay. And for that, it was. I was safe. I have so many small, ordinary memories of him, but really with him, nothing was small or ordinary. Everything he did, even if he was cussing under his breath, was because of his extraordinary love and kindness. And when trying to decide how to wrap this up, I went back to the internet. It felt harder to end than to begin. I read that you should close by saying goodbye, and I thought about that for a minute. And I couldn't help but be distracted in remembering how silly he was. There's a phrase he used to use all the time that makes me laugh. And every time I hear it, I smile and I think of him. And I bought this book a couple years ago for my kids. And so, Dad, I won't say goodbye. But I love you, and I'm going to miss you till the cows come home.
A lot of people.
Somebody's getting a chair.
I made a mistake going last. So what you guys think? I have a history of passing out, so I need to sit down. This week, I've tried to be the strongest one. Now that I'm up here, I feel like the weakest one. So, I'll say what I have to say. It's not really about me. My two sisters, you guys said that you had to say. I don't know, not a week goes by that I don't think about who I'm going to lose next in my life. Who is going to die? Birthdays are especially hard for me. Because I'm reminded that I'm not just getting older. Everyone around me is. It's just a year closer to another loss. Some might think that's morbid, but to me it keeps me grounded in my life. There's only one other person who thought about death as much as I do. That's Joe. He would say things like, "You're going to miss me when I'm gone," or when the big man pulls my covers. You guys have heard that. He's the only person I know who regularly opened the paper just to look at obituaries. And he casually described life and what it would look like after he died. I don't know exactly why he thought about his mortality so much. And here, I think about it, about myself, about what I lose. My theory is maybe he thought about it because he was worried about the people around him. My first memory, when Joe came into my life, was the first grade. I was about 6 years old, and he stepped in as a second dad. He'd pick me up from school, and when we'd get home, we'd sit together and wait for my mom to come home. And watching that interaction between them, it's my most vivid memory. I don't know why. I think because it's the most consistent thing. It's just something you see every day. He was always the same way. He always spoke of my mom's arrival as if it was the absolute highlight of his day. 99% of the time, it was pure joy when she'd step in. But even on the rare days he was upset or frustrated, it didn't matter. The moment he heard a car pull up or a car go by, he'd go look at the window, see if she was there. And when she finally did show up, he'd rush to the door and greet her with nothing but love and excitement. We love children and dogs, but that's that same quality, that pure, uncomplicated excitement that they show when you leave and come back. And he had that for my mom every single time. And in that, there's a good lesson for me that you don't have to be a great man. You don't have to be perfect to be a great man, but you do have to be intentional. It's a choice and a decision that the person walking through that door matters more than whatever mood you were in. Mom, you made sure you never had to doubt your place in the world, and that your home was a safe harbor. And when it's your turn to pass, I think I know who's going to be there with 51 questions. Asking about God knows what. And he's right. We do miss him.
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time. That was one of the most powerful collections of tributes that I've ever heard. And each one so unique to who you are and what your relationship was. Sean knew that she couldn't talk today, but she wrote him a letter, and it's on the back of a program that many of you have. She said this: "My sweet love, you were my anchor, our family's anchor. You were home. You were the supportive hand in everything we did and everything we built. The one who cared for us with selfless love and humble grace. For 34 years, we shared a marriage filled with all the normal ups and downs of life. But through it all, you were the person I could always count on, the person our family could always count on. You never needed to be the center of attention. You found joy in simply being present, watching over the people you loved, and taking in the moments that mattered the most. We are so proud and grateful for all you sacrificed for us. Thank you, my sweet love. You will live in our hearts forever and ever." And so many things that you just heard were so much of the story that I had the privilege to hear the other day. His desire to serve other people. They said there was never a no when it came to Joe. They were convinced that he had some kind of chore-related Tourette's because many times when he'd be asked to do something, he'd mumble something under his breath, but eventually the answer would be yes. He was always the first to offer help. Somebody mentioned the snowblower, and apparently one of his neighbors also got a snowblower and came over to snowblow his sidewalk. That was the one and only time that happened, apparently. Joe made sure that every time it snowed beyond that, he was the first one out, snow blowing not only his sidewalks and drive, but the neighbors around him as well. Sean told me about his unusual obsession with Skechers slip-ons, and she's wearing a pair today. So is Joe. He's wearing a pair of his favorites today. I got to hear about his love for sports and his work career. But when we finally wrapped up our conversation, I asked the family, I said, you know, if Joe's life taught you all any life lessons, just by the way he did it, what did you learn? And I think it was then that Tony spoke up and shared about Joe's childhood. And maybe some of you know this, maybe some of you don't, but he had a brutally difficult beginning to life, which ended up with him being in foster care on and off for most of his time. And for me, the person who didn't know him, but I had just listened for an hour to these incredible stories about this incredible man, this was the last thing that I heard. And the impression that left me with is the kind of man that Joe ended up being, he chose to be that guy. He made sure to be that guy. He broke a chain in the family he was from to start a new chain that's going to go on for generations past him, simply because that's who he decided he was going to be. That's the man he wanted to be, and that's the way that he wanted to provide for this family. And to me, that meant more than anything else the day when I left. You know, I see the Burrow jersey up there. I'm also a big sports fan, and we may have been doing the same thing here a few years back on a Monday night in January. I was getting ready to watch I have 3 sons, and I was with my middle son, and we were getting ready to watch a big game. That was the night that the Bengals were playing the Bills on national television on Monday Night Football. It was an exciting night. The stadium was packed. The whole nation was watching, but if you know anything about that night, you're going to already know ahead of time that was also, everything came to a screeching halt the moment that young Damar Hamlin hit the turf. I don't think, other than watching the events of 9/11, I've ever seen anything more surreal played out on television. The 60,000 fans were silent. The broadcasters didn't know what to tell us. I couldn't stop watching. These young athletes, including Joe Burrow, were pacing and shaking and crying because when trauma like that happens, when a sudden thing like that happens, we don't have anywhere to put it. It'll rock your soul. And in those next couple of days, I don't think I've ever heard so much open talk about prayer and blessings and miracles. And if you know anything about the story, you know that on Wednesday, they got an answer to their prayer because Damar Hamlin woke up. And apparently he couldn't talk because he still had tubes in his throat, but he could write. And reportedly, they gave him a small whiteboard and a marker. And the first thing that he wrote down was, did we win the game? And in a moment of profound wisdom, the doctor dealing with Damar Hamlin said, you did. You won, Damar. We didn't even finish that other game. You win. I know that this is an incredible, unfortunate loss. But by every way that you can possibly add up what matters in life, Joe wins. He wins. To have his kids, his wife, his friends, the people that knew him best say the things that we've just heard, what one of us in this room wouldn't trade everything we have to be known the same way. Now, I know that doesn't make up for the loss that you feel right now, and we talked a little bit about the big man and what Joe believed about the big man. And I share the belief that this life is only chapter 1, and there is another place where there is no sudden loss and there's no cancer and there's no dementia and there's no war in the Middle East. And I believe with everything that I am as a person that that's where Joe is right now. You don't live the kind of life that Joe led naturally. Something else drove him. And that is the way that life is supposed to be lived. So as I end my time with you today, I want to share a reading that I hope brings honor to the way that Joe lived his life. Because the one thing that you and I still have that unfortunately he doesn't, we all still have time. And that's what this reading's about. It's the lyrics of a spoken word from a group called Fearless Soul. And here's what it says. What if I died today? Would I be proud of the life that I've lived? What if I died tomorrow? Have I been happy? Would I be proud of the person that I've become? Has there been love in my life? Have I given enough love? Have I shown those I love the real me? Could I have done things better or differently? What will I leave behind? Will anyone on earth be better because I was there? Because the truth is, not one of us sitting in this room right now knows for sure that we're going to wake up tomorrow. We did not walk into this room with that guarantee. So if you don't like who you've been up to this moment, make a change and make it now and do it in Joe's honor. You have a broken relationship with somebody that you really care about? What if you tried to mend it today? If you can give more love, give it now. If you can play more and work less, decide and commit to do that today. If you can do anything to improve the quality of your life, make that commitment today. Write down everything that you can change in your life, everything that can't wait for tomorrow. If you've been putting off an apology to someone, what if you said you're sorry today? You've been putting off a phone call, what if you tried to call them this afternoon? And it doesn't matter if they pick up the phone. The only thing that matters is that you made the call. You need to give somebody a hug, give them a hug. What if we decided to wake up every day and stop caring so much about whatever other people thought of us, that we just woke up every single day, as I sense Joe did, and decide, you know what, today I'm going to be the very best version of who I am. When I'm present, when we're living in the moment. So get excited about your life. Love your life while you're still living it. Our new life in Joe's honor starts right now. Thank you so much for being here today, for you guys that spoke and shared. Powerful, powerful. And I pray that the rest of you that know this family, please continue to support them through the difficult time ahead. I pray that every one of us, I believe this with everything that I am, I believe that we can walk out of this room better people than we walked in, simply because we had a few minutes to pay attention to Joe's story. So I'm going to close with a word of prayer. And then in a few moments, Sam's going to come and dismiss us. There's some food and time afterwards for you to continue to tell Joe's stories. Let's pray, and then I'll turn it back over to Sam. Okay? God, I thank you for the power that's been in this room, for the beautiful stories, the words that were spoken. This is a man that was loved because he loved deeply. And I pray for comfort, not only today, but in the time ahead. I thank you for the friendships that are existing in this room, and I pray that they only get stronger. In your name we pray these things. Amen.
Thank you, Brian. This does conclude Joe's service here today, but as Brian said, we are going to have a reception over here in this room. But before we go over that way, I'd just like to invite you, if you'd like to take a moment, have a last leave at Joe's casket with him before we go ahead and enter the other room and continue to share his stories with the family. Again, thank you all for being here today. We'll have these doors open and the reception going in just a moment. Thank you. That's right. Got it? Yep.